of them I know is more echoey. So I don't know, this one definitely is loud. It feels a bit too loud. That one's worse. Let's go to this one and I'll kind of hear. Yeah. I know. Oh. I know, but when I teach, I get so excited about the material that I kind of pace and I jump and I'm like very uncontrollable. So it's safer if I just kind of do. But there you go. Let's see what the time is. And yes, so I will be substituting for the first hour. You may recognize me from when I did an 11 a.m. teach last week or the week before. Today I'm doing the 10 a.m. I think Rabbi Goodman might be, was it going to be Rabbi Schuldenfrei at the 10 a.m.? Either way, clashes come up, people get called away, so I'm not sure why I'm here in terms of like why I'm covering. It might be funeral, there you go. I was hoping that it wasn't a funeral because that implies someone died, but maybe it was their time, maybe they lived to 105, so it was a celebration of life. But yeah, it's 10 a.m. and it's okay for people to trickle in. It's freezing cold, and a lot of us are not in a state of wellness. Quite physically, there's so much stuff going around. You might even be able to just hear in my throat, I'm at the very, very end of a cold. I got tested, it was nothing horrible, but I am at the very end of a cold. Rosie is here, and Susie said, please, we haven't yet started.
Okay, we had a meeting this morning, that's why we're late. I mean, we're not tardy, so I just want to tell you. And Susie came early and put out the refreshments for you. So we were here in spirit.
You're right on time. It's 10 o'clock, so I'm just kind of saying a big hello and saying I feel 100% fine, by the way. Hopefully my voice will last. It's just been impossible to rest it with 2 small children, and you have to say, stop, put it down, don't touch your sister. And also what I do at Hillel is constant teaching, constant talking in staff meetings. So I just haven't had the chance to rest my voice, but I feel fine. Hopefully you can still understand me and barely tell the difference. I just sound slightly huskier than usual. Not yet, but we're... Which look? Yeah, the mother look, yes. You really need glasses for the look. You need to be able to look over your glasses and just, Sometimes. It worked for me. Like, I would get intimidated when teachers or parents would look a certain way because I'm a bit of a people pleaser. So I would get very upset if I knew that my authority figures were mad at me. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Disappointment is a motivator. I also would get very affected by disappointment. I'm actually the pushover parent, but my husband is very good at being loving, but very firm. Like, nope, sorry, boundary in place. But I'll be like, nah, just I'll give you some candy if you just be nicer. So I undermine it by mistake. I'm not very good. God bless the older generation. So, because I had a suspicion, a feeling that I would be getting to teach a bunch of MIDs this winter to spring semester, because there's just a lot of illnesses and funerals, I kind of thought rather than doing like a one-off, I would do a series, and I picked a topic that I knew would sustain us for many weeks. And it's this topic of wellness, of looking at ancient and modern Jewish texts primarily and saying, how can we actually benefit from this Jewish wisdom? And just come at it from different angles as well. So we've got like part 3, really, because I've had the chance to do other sessions in this same kind of category. And we're going to be looking this week at a few things. Some of it's, again, it's the attitude. Some of it is our relationship with others, how we help others, how we ask for help and let ourselves be helped, what the empathy piece is in all of this, and also when is enough in terms of attitudinally. When do we just have to be like, get over it, you're fine. So again, we'll play around. There's some delicious Talmudic texts as well as some modern innovations. And we're just going to have a quick check-in as well. Today, on a scale of medieval lion, how are you feeling? Are you a 1, a 2, a 3? I hope some of you are at least an 8, because the 8 is definitely the goofiest of all the medieval lions. I feel like 7 is a bit of an exasperated lion. 9 is a little bit like, oh! Yeah, a little bit monkey-like. 1 is just over. 1 is over life. And I think, yeah, the happiest lion is an 8. And I'm feeling like an 8, personally, right now. Like, ha! So, I hope that our inner lions can be harnessed for a serious text. First off, we have a Dutch Jewish author who chronicled her feelings, her thoughts, her philosophy, and perished in Auschwitz, which, as we know, it's just an absolute tragedy. This is not a Holocaust week of what we're doing, but it's beautiful to get to highlight and elevate voices who could have made an even bigger impact in the world had she been allowed to live. But she puts forth this really beautiful point. Her name was Esther, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name, so I'm just going to call her Esther. Hillesum. She says that the inner world is as real as the outer world. The inner world is as real as the outer world. One ought to be conscious of that. It too has its landscape, contours, possibilities, its boundless regions. What do we make of that? Are we kind of in agreement, or is that just bizarre?
Mental health is as important as physical.
Yeah, Gary had a really good spin on this. Mental health is as important as physical health, because we've talked about that a lot. The mind and the body, that kind of dichotomy. I love that, yes. Why else would I bring this text to us? I mean, it's beautiful. And like I said, I always want to highlight people who didn't get to have a voice because of the Holocaust. Please, Bridget. Ooh, yes. Because they're so important, I will. In my answer, I always kind of will, I promise, make sure that those who are following virtually or just those in the back can hear. You can't ignore it. It's so important. We're highlighting the inner world. It's not something you can just go, la, 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 this isn't real, this doesn't matter. It's beautiful question, Ernie. That's a very scholarly reaction. This is in the realm of literature or philosophy. We're not saying, what is it, though? The inner world, the way I'm interpreting it, is our emotional state and our imagination and our feelings, the stuff that's intangible, our dreams, our goals, our fear, and our anxiety, and all of those emotions like love, the things that we feel that are on the inside, and that we can kind of change and be very impacted by, is just as real as what's going on outside. And obviously we're affected by both, and we have very little control sometimes over both. Although maybe we're going to stagger towards a thought that we may be more in control of our mentality than we thought, or maybe we're less in control because we can very much feel victim to the forces that be. Like, again, this is very ambiguous and deliberately so. And this is also, there's no right or wrong, because again, this is literature in some ways. This is opinion, this isn't fact. Please.
I think that the Olympics now are a very good example of the two together, because here are these
Thank you, Joette. That was a concrete example, and I'll say it out loud. The Winter Olympics, we see as a very good example of how people's inner world really can be as powerful and affect their outer world. Because this happens in every sport, in every big physical achievement. You can be physically able to do these incredible sports, and you can get in your head, and if you are feeling too nervous or underconfident or something else is mentally in your way, it will stop you being able to physically achieve. And you can flip it as well. You might not even have normally been able to physically achieve something, but if you get that mental power, that zest, that absolute need to do it, and maybe it's survival, it forces you to perform a physical feat you might not have been able to achieve. But that there really is such power and such importance, such primacy in that self, that sense of self that is inside us, in those inner voices and feelings. And it just feels real. And especially if you think of a prisoner, someone whose physical reality has been shifted and enforced upon them, you're still free in your mind to go wherever you need to go, even though it's not real. You're not really in the forest that you imagine, but you can conjure up that forest. You can tell yourself a memory or a joke or something else, and there is the power of that ability to stay sane and to choose your own adventure in your mind. Obviously, to a limited extent. It's sometimes hard or impossible to rescue yourself. And what we're going to see are some examples of this, because I think that's the question. Okay, with the importance of our inner life, can we change our physical circumstances, or is it impossible? And again, how do other people impact our journey as well? Please. Susie, hi. I'm so sorry, my love. I saw a hand at some point and got carried away.
It might be a little long. I'll try to shorten it. So as a child, I experienced a lot of trauma. And I read a lot. And the books that I read were things like The Hobbit and the trilogy. And I developed a whole inner world, actually. And that is what gave me strength. Even though I didn't, I still suffer from having a lot of inner strength sometimes, but sometimes it comes out when I allow it. And I remember also, I would have horrible stage fright before I'd get up and sing. And there was an interview with Pavarotti who said, anybody who gets up and performs and doesn't have stage fright and tells you they're not afraid is either a liar or a very poor performer. It's what you do
Yeah.
with that fright that turns it around. And I was able to turn that around. People would see me shaking, but then when I get up, all of a sudden, I look like I own the stage. And I think it's because of that training of having my inner world totally take over what was going on in my outer world. So,
Yeah, they get the mic. Yeah. We will try that, Ernie, but we never know how long we're going to speak for until it's happened, and I will try to give people the mic. I know I heard every word, and you do have a very good performance voice, so I can summarize some of that. I do think a lot of people heard most of that, and thank you. That was a delicious and very powerful, very real point, that for Susie, fantasy helped sustain her even during really traumatic, tough times, because it's escapism, but it's a way to protect yourself and also it means that your insides are not aligning with your outsides. That does work, and it's very
Rabbi,
loud, so we'll use it. Yeah.
I'm going to leave the mic here, so if you have something to say, please come
Yeah,
up.
and I will
Please come up and
distribute
say
it. I'll distribute it as well. And also, again, the idea that as Pavarotti said, he got nervous. We all get nervous when we're performing. If you don't, you're either a liar or just you have no self-awareness. You're probably not a good performer, because our emotions we're at the mercy of our emotions. We actually can't impact them. They brew up. They're natural. They're physiological. When you feel afraid or something happens very quickly, that initial thought is automatic. We have no control over that. We have control over how we then react to that emotion. Do we let it consume us? Do we then go in for the punch? If we're feeling afraid or angry, do we breathe? Do we journal? Do we share it with others? How do we then take it? And again, stage fright, that's a beautiful, you can't help it. You just feel incredibly attacked preemptively. And it's in your mind. Nothing's actually happening. So in that case, your inner world is bigger and more impactful than your outer world. Well, your outer world is safe, but your inner world, you are terrified. And again, those are things we can't stop. And we're going to look that wellness comes from not stopping them, but from acknowledging them and channeling them, sharing them, and also knowing when to keep them to yourself. And it's about balance. We've got a lot of beautiful sources to get through, so we'll do a few more sources. But again, I do love when people share, and thank you when people share personal things as well. This is, at least I hope it is, a space where we care for each other and protect each other, and we'll hold on to the things that we are telling one another. We're not going to kind of gossip about stuff outside of this room. I wanted to look at empathy versus sympathy, because we're then going to see this come up in Talmudic times, because it's very different, because we talk about our inner life, our attitudes, our responses to other people. And I'm going to go to Brené Brown. Hands up if you've heard of Brené Brown. She's wonderful. Of course I have, because I put the source sheet together. That was an irrelevant hand acknowledgement. Oh, I have. Of course you have, you silly person. She is wonderful. She is a researcher. She is all about inner life. She talks about what is shame versus guilt. Like, that's one of her big ones. Why do I loathe myself when I have everything going for me? Why did I have a mental breakdown in my 30s? What is mental wellness really? And she researches, and she's a story gatherer. So she's interviewed thousands of people, and she is in the scientific community as well. She's also quite a lovely personality, and she is a good speaker. But anyway, she just had this fascinating thing. Because what we're talking about here is, if someone is ill, is sick, whether it's physical or mental, how can we actually check in with them and respond? So I'm going to read this out and just think about if this is ringing true or if this feels not helpful. So she asks the question, what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Teresa Weissman, definitely, I don't know if she's Jewish or not. Teresa isn't a very Jewish name, but Weissman definitely is. But she is a nursing scholar who'd been noticing this in her line of work. She came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, which is the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective, at least as their truth. It's hard to truly understand the entirety of what someone else is going through. But it's that ability, again, to put yourself in another's shoes. Like, that's the common phrase. Put yourself, or walk a mile in someone else's shoes, kind of thing. And again, this is very self-evident. This is basic stuff that we've known for a really long time. But again, it's important just to say, because sympathy isn't. Sympathy is you don't necessarily really think about that person's perspective. 2, this is hard for all of us, staying out of judgment. Because especially if someone is in a very bad situation, but they made a lot of mistakes and bad choices getting there, it's very hard just to feel that perspective, that pain, to take it on, because we're very quick to just, oh, you should have done this, or why don't you try this next time? And that critical element comes in so fast. And that can be very sympathetic, but it's not empathy, it's not connection, it's not just truly acknowledging that person where they're at. This is hard for a lot of us, because we go into that judgment place. And again, as Brene acknowledges, it's not easy when you enjoy judgment, as most of us do. 3 is recognizing the emotion in other people. So obviously, to really get it, you have to just observe, feel, make space. Because it's also very easy to just run on in and be like, oh, hi, you fell, I'm so sorry, But you need to kind of really actually pay attention. Give it that space and allow the other person to tell you what their emotions are, rather than just labeling them. Oh, I assume you're feeling this. I assume you're feeling that. It's about not taking up too much space so you can recognize their emotion, their truth. And then finally, and this is, again, so obvious, but it's important to say, communicating that. If you're going to do effective empathy, it's not enough just to feel it. Oh, I feel so, But if you are able to actually express it with someone, then you can potentially at least make a change. Again, you're not going to be able to heal a chronic condition or even change someone physically, but you might be able to transform them mentally. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space where someone is kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Right? That's empathy. It's getting in the hole with that person and being there and saying, hey, I know what it's like. That's that perspective, I'm letting it in. I'm feeling your emotion. I'm not saying it's the same, because it's often everyone has a very unique journey, but it's just saying, in general, I know what darkness feels like, and you're not alone. Sympathy is kind of standing at the top of that hole and saying, oh yeah, it's bad, do you want a sandwich? Let me rush in to fix. Let me rush in to try to fix this. Which, by the way, isn't a bad thing. We're not saying sympathy is evil. We're just saying a lot of us default to sympathy when really empathy would get us there. And there's another slide. Empathy is a choice, says Brene. It's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. So again, it's us getting vulnerable. With sympathy, we kind of push it away. Oh, that's bad, bye. And with empathy, it's kind of opening up our darkest place. And you feel it, right? If someone tells you something horrible, you feel horrible yourself, because you've actually opened up the emotion of what it's like to be hurt. And you might go back to your own experiences and try to say, ooh, yeah, I get it. And it can make you cry, it make you feel awful, which is why we don't always want to do it. So I have to connect with myself in something that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathetic response begin with, at least, and we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to put the silver lining around it. And again, so Brene, this is a talk that she gives. So she's now saying, all right, let's give an example. So I had a miscarriage, says person A. Person B says, oh, well, at least you know you can get pregnant. Do you hear that? A lot of us are like, oh, because let's just break that down for a second. Person B just got hit with some horrible information. I think a lot of us have heard that before. Someone had to admit, had to say, I had a miscarriage. It's common. It's really sad. It's the loss of life, the loss of potential life. It's devastating. And it can be physically painful and obviously emotionally really, really painful. And what do we do with that? You just want to comfort, it's coming from a place of wanting to comfort. And again, as Bridget absolutely is doing, you want to kind of be like, oh, well, let me kind of try to stop you hurting. Like, it's actually coming from a place often of like, I want you to hurt less, so I'm going to give you something that you can feel good about. The fact that you miscarried means that at least you were fertile. Like, at least the egg took for a few months, potentially. So, well, at least you can get pregnant. Like, good luck, you'll get to do it again. And that might be, in fact, it is physically true. That's not a lie. That's not someone saying, shut up, don't talk to me. That is someone trying, like, oh, honey, here's the good news. But in that moment, that is not what our person who is suffering wants to hear or can hear. And they could get very upset if you tell them that. But we often do that. I'm a rabbi, I've been trained, I've done pastoral care, and I still fall into the trap of silver lining things. The, well, at least, and again, there's two more examples, you know. I think my marriage is falling apart. Yes, but at least you have a marriage. Like, you know, better to have had love and lost than never loved at all. That kind of line. You know, well, there's another person in this example who has 2 kids. John's getting kicked out of school. Yes, but at least your Sarah is an A-grade student. That's deflecting. You know, yep, John's a problem, but you shouldn't feel bad because your other kid is fine. Not helpful. That's whataboutism. It's very hard to sit with the pain of someone and just to connect and let it in and to cry with them and just feel it. And again, the wow, I know what it's like, or even I don't know what it's like. I'm here with you. Like, just your presence, you're not alone. That's all you need to ever say. And it's so hard, you know? One of the things we do in the face of very difficult conversations is try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Think about how just right that feels, you know, if someone, and you've been the person who've had to share bad news. We've all been there. We've all had to share awful things to friends, family, even strangers, doctors, etc. And, you know, for that person just to say, oh, I can't even imagine, but I'm so glad you told me, you know, as opposed to, yes, but your hair looks great today, you know. Again, we get this, but it's worth saying it out loud because it's something we can do. Because we've been, over the past few weeks, talking about how insidious things like fear, anxiety, depression, physical illnesses are. And then there's that, well, how do we take care of it when it happens? And how can we be when we're on either side of that? And presence, what we're learning here is presence, truthfulness, the ability to be vulnerable and to be uncomfortable. Because I think that's really what this is about. It's really horrible to feel uncomfortable. And someone else's raw emotional state makes us feel uncomfortable because we're actually naturally very empathetic. We feel the pain so easily. We just want to cry and hold them and we don't know what to do. So we go, you know, and we want to be there. But it's very, very hard. And therefore, part of wellness is the ability to dwell with these feelings and really show up. So the truth is rarely a response that won't make things better. Truth will make things better. You can be real. You can be negative. But it's important to make space for that. What makes something better is connection. This, I think, this kind of principle shows up in a Talmudic text that feels almost magical, and maybe you've studied it before, but it's just worth bringing it, because we're going to talk now about rabbis, ancient rabbis who would get sick. And the dynamic here is we've got like the head rabbi and his students, and we're going to see what happens with that. So, just again, in the back of your mind, think about, are we seeing sympathy or empathy, and what we would do. Rabbi Yochanan's student, Rabbi Hia bar Abba, fell ill. Rabbi Yochanan entered to visit him and said to him, "Is your suffering dear to you? Do you desire to be ill and afflicted?" By the way, that's like quite an odd thing to ask someone, right? I think a lot of us are like, what? That's not exactly a get well card, right? Do you like where you're at? But that, by the way, is very refreshing in some ways. It's honest. It's saying, huh. And also we're understanding possibly what the affliction might be, because it might be something that's going on mentally, because it's framed almost as a choice, because you know that if your arm doesn't work, you're not going to be able to say, do you like your arm not working? Are you enjoying your arm not working? That's a redundant, useless thing to say, right? I don't think, and these are rabbis, no one's going to waste their time talking about that. But this suffering, is this suffering dear to you? Do you desire to be ill and afflicted like this? And the answer, interestingly, had the answer have been yes, would the rabbi have then walked away and said, jolly good, as you were, bye. But the answer, of course, is I welcome neither the suffering nor its reward. And by the way, we're kind of seeing a glimpse now into the rabbinic system, which is some, and again, this is not quite where we want to go, but some ancient rabbis believed that if they suffered, that was punishment, that they must have sinned. They must have been sinners, so their punishment is absolving them from their sins. Either way, this person is in emotional and mental agitation and suffering. I don't think this person is physically having a fever right now. Like I said, it would just be useless to say, are you enjoying your fever? There's something this rabbi is stewing. They've had a breakdown somehow. Something is going on here. And there's the check. Do you want to be this way? Is there a reason, a purpose for you doing this? Which is, again, head on. I see what's going on. And by the way, Rabbi Yochanan is naming it. He's saying, you're suffering, and you're ill, and you're afflicted. So he's calling, it's like, again, going to someone who's saying, I see you've had a miscarriage, right? How is that feeling? It's very blunt, but he's naming the problem and giving the person that kind of choice of like, do you want to be here? The Rabbi here says, no, I am not enjoying this suffering. Rabbi Yochanan says, give me your hand. Rabbi Hia bar Abba gave him his hand, consent. And Rabbi Yochanan stood him up and restored him to health. Sissel. If you want to use the mic, but if not, I will repeat it. It's just that it can sometimes take a while anyway. But we always love hearing your voice, Sissel.
Good morning, y'all.
Hello.
I don't think that Rabbi Yochanan entry, what he said, do you enjoy being sick? I don't think that's very empathic, and I don't think that's a proper entry to greet the person that is ill. He finished it all right. Give me your hand and I'll help you. That was helpful. Moral is he restored to health. But when somebody comes to me with that introduction, I don't think I'm going to be very receptive to whatever else is going to say.
Yeah, beautiful. Because again, this is so challenging. This is not the language we're used to today.
Well, if somebody's really ill, and I think he was probably very observant of this other rabbi. It was probably psychosomatic, and he recognized that. And it's sort of like a shock treatment, So that's how I view it. So if he was, like Cecil said, though, if he was seriously ill, I don't think that Rabbi Yochanan would have had that approach. So maybe he just did an assessment of what was going on.
yeah, I agree with Rosie a lot, because your point is so valid, which is, this is not empathy 101. This isn't even sympathy. This is bullish, this is horrible that you would march in on someone who was really sick. However, I think that leads us to believe what Rosie is seeing in the text, which is the fact that all it took was a hand to restore this person to health meant that it was either something that was psychosomatic or a disconnection. There was something going on. There was a broigus, possibly. There was something meant, and again, a broigus is when you're very, very agitated and furious with another individual. You've had a fallout, and you could be sulking, reeling, or something else is going on. You are emotionally disturbed. And again, I do see this as this rabbi is like, it seems to be very unwell, but only emotionally. And again, you could read this text as Rabbi Yochanan has supernatural healing mystic powers. Maybe there was something physically going on, but I think a lot of the Talmud doesn't go in that direction. And again, we're going to see, by the way, this is only part 1. There's another slide in this Talmudic story, and it's like, yes, you're going to love where it goes. You're all going to love where it goes. But I think that, as Rosie said, this rabbi, by the way, they are students, they know each other. So you would absolutely never walk in to, an unknown patient's room and say, like, are you enjoying this? But these are best friends. These are chevrutas. They've known each other all their life. So you can imagine, like, here, but other is sulking, is miserable, is woe is me. And then Yochanan comes in and is like, hey, you missed class. Let's talk this through. Are you enjoying this? And have you had enough time? And he says, nope. And then I'm going to take you back into the fold. Like, again, the Talmud unfortunately doesn't give us enough details in this moment, but we've heard these names before, and these are renowned rabbis who talk a lot about things. And what we notice is that the giving you the hand, the let me connect, let me be honest, let me come to you as well. I'm going to visit you in your sick room. There is definitely ancient empathy going on in there, even though I think the language is very tough love language, and we wouldn't say it today. Can I do the next slide? Or, Lana, do you have like a burning desire and a good reflection? Go for it. This is such a meaty sauce.
Okay, it's if a person has a tendency to wallow in their misery, that kind of language will allow the person that wallows to, maybe I am, and maybe I'm exacerbating my own illness.
I'm so glad we got that point. Yes, I think that we may well be seeing, again, the kind of psychosomatic wallowing or exacerbating that there is, and there may well be physical issues going on here, but when you're in a certain downward mental spiral, it sometimes makes everything exacerbated and worse, and people can almost relish, you can almost enjoy the wallowing and the misery, because it's like it gets you out of having to go to work and doing all the unpleasant tasks you have to do. It's shutting off. And again, these ancient rabbis didn't understand something like depression as a chemical imbalance either. So this could just be this, get up, you're fine. But I think the gesture still is very powerful. It's an adult looking at you and saying, hey, is there a way that you can get past this? And I'm here. You don't have to do this alone. I will help you. What went from very just verbal to very physical. Give me your hand. Here's my hand. I'm going to stand you up. I'm going to help you get better. Because notice that language. Rabbi Yochanan stood him up. So here it's just like, and he's like, I'm going to take you, buddy. You're not alone. And then the health comes back. But here's the next slide. And again, Rabbi Yochanan is our healer. Later, Rabbi Yochanan fell ill. What? Maybe this is physical. Maybe it's contagious. Or maybe there's something else going on. Rabbi Hanina entered to visit him and said to him, because, hey, I guess this is a phrase that you say when you visit the sick, "Is your suffering dear to you?" Which Sissel would be like, this is incorrect. You first say, "How are you feeling? Here's some chicken soup." But Rabbi Yochanan replies, again, it's the same. "I welcome neither the suffering nor its reward," which is code for "get me out of here." Rabbi Hanina said, "Give me your hand." And Yochanan gave him his hand. And Rabbi Hanina stood him up and restored him to health. And the Talmud continues, like that's not enough. The Talmud notices, why couldn't Rabbi Yochanan restore himself to health? Because if he's got all the answers, and if he's, mentally well enough, why couldn't he snap himself out of it? Given he'd also done this for here. And the sages answer, a prisoner cannot free themselves from prison. What do we make of this? We've got a lot of different things going on. Susie, do you want to?
The thing that strikes me about this is actually the antithesis of what we were talking about before, because we were talking about being able to internally gather ourselves and get ourselves out of a situation, but here a prisoner cannot get himself out of a situation. So, that's my take on this.
Yes. 100%. There's something severe enough here that means you can't just use your inner world by yourself to free yourself. That this is real, this is physical, and again, whether we're talking about something physical or something like depression that's insidious, or PTSD, that there actually isn't a way just to wish yourself better. We step into a reality whereby we need someone else. And even when we've been the healer, when it's our turn, when we're ill, we can't heal ourselves. We have to ask for help. We have to be able to receive help as well. So it's complicated. Lana.
There is a physiological phenomenon that takes place when you're being helped. There was an article I read about that kissing a boo-boo actually makes the pain go away somewhat because somebody is being empathetic to you. When you've been in an accident and you hear the ambulance coming, it actually lessens the pain, allowing you, when somebody helps you up, allows you to do the rest.
Yes, 100%. It goes back to what we talked about the last time I was here, which is community. We talked about self-care is actually community care. Because, again, you can just feel that. That's the realness of the pain is exacerbated when we're helpless, when we're alone. There's nothing scarier than I've fallen, I can't get up and no one's around. It's terrifying. When you know someone's coming to get you, you breathe that sigh of relief. When you know you're not alone, when you know you've got your phone and you can call for help, it's very tangible. Even if it's, again, psychological, like nothing actually happened. But it shows up in your heart rate. It shows up in your breathing. If you feel calm versus if you feel anxious. And again, the anxiety can be alleviated by those around you. So what we could maybe do is build towards a thesis of saying, it's possible to help yourself if you ask for help. You can change your inner life, but you can't do it alone because you're trapped. If you're trapped in your trauma, if you're trapped in depression, if you're trapped in anything, there has to be an element of your own willingness to get out. But you also can't get out when you're in the pit. You still need that hand. So you're still actually responsible for your own healing because they break down the beats in this story. And at any moment, those sick rabbis could have said, I want to stay here. I'm okay with my trauma. I'm okay with feeling so bad right now. I'm in my cycle. I don't want to escape. That's a choice. I know a lot of people who stay sick, who are unwilling to go to a therapist, who are unwilling to seek help, to share with a partner or a friend or a child or a parent what's really going on. And we could be talking about addiction as well, because there's the element of shame. I don't want to out myself. I don't want to say I'm in pain, I'm in trouble. Because, again, that's an added layer. So there has to be, help comes in two ways. It's both from the outside, because we need that other person to pull us out, to give us that love, that little, I'm going to kiss the boo-boo. But it has to also be within. Because, by the way, have you ever tried to help someone who doesn't want your help? Doesn't work. They push you away and they hate it even more. So you do get to release yourself, but you need someone else as well. So it's a kind of two-way thing. The outside has to be willing to help you, and the inside has to be willing as well. So again, there's a whole dynamic going on. Bridget, quick point, and then we've got more slides. Yeah, I'll say that out loud. Yes, especially when something devastating has happened, like you've lost someone, you're not going to get better. You're going to actually need a time of mourning, a time to grieve. This could also be something that might be going on. Maybe these rabbis have experienced grief. And again, when we think about what keeps you in your bed, wasting away, feeling sad, crying, feeling unable to function in the world, it could be debilitating grief, which we know as humans is understandable, is one of the worst pains it's possible to feel. And Judaism has a system. It doesn't say get up and go to work. You get to take a whole year off in some ways, a week of intense shiva, a month of fairly intensive daily prayers, a whole year of not going to parties, because there is an understanding that you're not happy, that you're not able to feel joy. So, and that's also maybe why the rabbi's asking, because by the way, we lean into grief a lot because it is love. It's a way of expressing the love we've lost. So this conversation would also work if these rabbis were grieving, but it could be, hey, we've noticed it's been a while. Are you still needing to grieve? And by the way, when you stop grieving, you never really stop grieving. I want to make that very clear. There's no day where you're like, the pain is no longer here. I'm fine with my devastating loss. You never get over that. We all know that. We are all old enough to have experienced devastating losses, but there is a time when you're able to say, I'm ready to connect with the living again. I'm ready to be open to new life and to joy. I'm ready to take the hand of my rabbi, of my teacher. I'm ready to go back to work, back to school, and I'll kind of deal with my grief as it comes up. It'll be part of me, but there's a way that you become mentally well. And again, that's what wellness is. We talked a few weeks about the fact that emotional wellness isn't necessarily happiness. It's just about being able to feel and cope and honestly acknowledge your feelings. And your feelings could be very down in the dumps. Your feelings could absolutely be that of grief and terror, and correctly so, because the world is very tragic. But it's the ability to not be destroyed by that. Just in the interest of time, I think, is it okay if I move on? Because there's so many more slides, and a very funny one as well, I think. Let's just see if we're going to do that. We're going to go past self-compassion.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Gary.
I think we all acknowledge that different people need different periods of time to grieve. One size doesn't fit all.
Very astute, and thank you for that comment, Gary. One size never fits all, and we do need different times to be able to grieve. And that's, again, maybe why we don't have the time frame in the previous story. We don't have, it was 2 months, and therefore the rabbi checked in on the other rabbi. We just have this, because these rabbis are best friends, they knew. They come in at a certain time, and they're like, hey, I think your suffering needs to be over, or at least you need to integrate it into your world. I love that point as well. And again, this is another thing that's surprisingly astute for the Talmud. There is an acknowledgement that people feel anxious. You know, therapy has maybe been around for thousands of years and we never realized it, but maybe some of these ancient rabbis were therapists. They ask themselves, first of all, they use a line from Proverbs, if there is anxiety in a person's heart, let them quash it. Now that's from the Torah, like Proverbs, King Solomon has been attributed to writing Mishlei. That doesn't feel very nice, very compassionate. If you have an anxious heart, just shush, quash it, squash it down, put it in a box. The rabbis have a reaction to this. This is so exciting. They look at that and say, that doesn't feel psychically appropriate. So Rabbi Ami and Asi, they dispute what this verse could mean. And we don't even know who said what. Maybe it's too spicy because one of them is contradicting the Torah, so they're going to keep themselves anonymous. But one of them says, a person should forcefully push it out of their mind. But the other one says, no. It means a person should tell, and they twist the verb in Hebrew, and this is why we have the ability to do this. They should tell their concerns to others, which is the opposite. Or maybe it isn't, because maybe when you tell someone else your troubles, you are releasing it from your own mind. Maybe that's actually the way. And I think a lot of us have felt that when we've not told a soul about a really dark feeling or a trauma, it eats away at us and stays with us. When we confess that to someone else, when we feel safe to do so, we do feel a little bit lighter. But only if the other person has empathy. That's where it comes up. Because if they say, shush, I don't want to hear it, or I don't believe you, that feels terrible. But when you're able to find a trusting other person who can be present and say, tell me how that miscarriage made you feel, or I'm here for you, or yep, I went through that, or I didn't, but I can imagine that's horrible, it can actually help the anxious heart. So this is an incredibly important core text, whereby notice as well that it's the second opinion that then lasts, that stays with us. You know, you often give two opinions, and the first one acts as your baseline, and your second line acts to kind of knock it down and say, no, 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 don't quash that, that's really unhealthy, share it. So again, I'm so excited to see that in the Torah, that we're told when you're anxious, if you're by yourself, again, this goes back to that example of the sick rabbi, if you are alone, nothing good is going to come of this. You're not going to be able to heal yourself. But if you invite someone else in, that hand will be extended in a positive relationship, and there will be a decreasing of anxiety. I think we've kind of, that's just bullet points for myself. Okay, we've got just two more Torah examples, and I'm going to try to end the class in like 5 minutes, so we still get a break. The sages are going to we're going to see two more examples of an individual who is experiencing anxiety and struggle. Adam, during the first ever winter, Adam, who doesn't yet have his Eve for the purposes of this story, grew afraid. He saw the nights getting longer and the days gradually getting shorter. With no knowledge of the cycles of the world or the nature of seasons, Adam said, "Woe to me, the world is being destroyed because of my sins." Eventually, he calculated he would be alone in a world of eternal darkness. There you go. A world that had returned to the state of pre-creation and primordial chaos. As the days are getting darker and darker and darker, terrified, Adam fasted and prayed for 8 days, hoping to avert the world's destruction. But on the 9th day, however, the day of the winter solstice, the day was slightly longer than it had been the day before, and Adam realized at this point that what he actually had assumed was a punishment for his sins was nature, the way of the world. First of all, by the way, the rabbis use this as a template for Hanukkah. If you notice the timing of 8 days, this is the acknowledgement that ancient human beings, because Adam was a pagan, if anything, wasn't Jewish, that there was always some kind of festival of light, because Adam does this special task, and then the next year Adam celebrates those 8 days, even though the first 8 days he fasted. But that's what the rabbis are really using this text for. But what I'm going to use this text for, and other people as well who are paying attention to mental health issues, is that idea that we are allowing the first ever human being to feel afraid, to feel a very physical darkness and aloneness from a very natural idea of it's getting darker and darker and darker, and to very much internalize it and say, am I being punished? Let me try to wallow. Let me fast. Let me go into the pit. Let me make myself sick. Let me starve myself because I want to try to affect change, because that was how ancient people believed it would happen. If I punish myself, God will stop punishing me. That's not what we do, ladies and gentlemen, in this day and age. But that was an ancient classic response. And beautifully, healing happened because Adam realized there was nothing ever wrong. But he had an anxiety attack, essentially, and takes it out on himself. And he realizes, oh, it's not about me. That's nature being nature. It's such a beautiful text because obviously he doesn't yet know how the world works because it's at the very beginning of the world. And again, I don't think this happened in a very real sense, but these sages are telling this story and they're giving us permission to say, night is scary, being alone is terrifying. It's shortly after this that God creates Eve in this telling. And it makes you go insane when you feel alone. And it's not always about you. Adam felt, because he was the center of humanity, but actually it wasn't about him. His journey, the healing he had to do was a mental reassurance of, you're going to be okay, just hang on. And also he's seasonal affective disorder. He's sad because it's dark and cold. It's real, like depression happens. And the idea that it's coming to an end was ultimately of benefit to him and to all humans. Please.
Considering it was on the 9th day, how did he know his prayers weren't just answered?
Very good point. It's the 9th day. Maybe his prayers were just answered. I love that question because it actually is saying, what is the logic of this story? Again, this is a story. This didn't really happen for sure. It's a parable. But I think there was never a term or condition. Adam just kept on fasting, and suddenly he notices that the sun is coming out earlier. And it may well be that he thought it was because of my fasting. And I think that still gets you to the same point in some ways, which is I can have control over my surroundings. I think what would happen is the year after that, and the year after that, and then the year after that, that's when he finally gets the message, oh, this is just what happens. But yeah, that's delicious. Maybe that first year, he actually felt very proud of himself, like, I affected change. God made it lighter because I prayed. It's a beautiful reading. We're also going to look at, the idea of moping, of exacerbating, of when is it possible to take it too far. This is a nasty Talmud story. I only recently got exposed to it, so I just thought, let me share it with you, we'll process it, and we'll move on. This is the story of Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Hyrcanus. Hyrcanus had many plowmen who were plowing fertile soil, but Eliezer was plowing earth that was full of stones. Eliezer sat down and cried. His father said to him, my son, why are you crying? Are you distressed because you plow stony land? That's genuinely tough. Why is your farming so hard? Now, you shall plow good soil with us. But Eliezer sat down on the good soil and wept. So we've established it's not just that the farming was hard. When it's stony, of course that's hard, but here, let's give you good soil. Nope, the problem is deeper. His father said to him, my son, why are you weeping? Are you distressed because you're plowing good soil? No, he answered his father. Why then are you crying? By the way, at first this sounds like, oh wow, maybe there's good empathy going on. We're listening, the father's taking the time to check in with the son. And now we get the answer. I weep only because I want to learn Torah. Ooh. The rabbis are clearly like, this is going to be our hero. Here's a hero, maybe it's an Akiva story. You know how Akiva is 40 and was a shepherd and was very poor, and it's not until he's 40 that he realizes his rabbinic dream of, actually, I want to study. And then he goes and he's great. So is this another Akiva? His father said to him, you are 28 years old and you still want to learn Torah? And then Hyrcanus said, go, get married, have children, and send them to school. i.e., so they can learn Torah instead. This is the opposite of what we thought, right? We have this like, oh, wow, is this a transformative hero's journey? No, we've got a 28-year-old son who is moaning about helping his father plan and heal crops. And the son is saying, I just wanted to be a scholar, Daddy. And he says, like, you've missed your chance. You can't be. Not everyone can be. You have to grow up. Have your own children. You're 28, which, you know, if you're dead by 30, he's very behind the times in this ancient day and age. You need to be part of your role. And again, this is a harsh story because I wished that the father would have said, great, I'll pay a stipend, you go learn Torah. I'm going to wrap up in 1 second, then you can all have a 5-minute break. And yeah, there is that limitation. There is the limitation to that period of when you are down, when you are depressed, because there is a field in front of you that you do need to tend. You have, and we all have family obligations. And when we take ourselves out of that, when we go into our inner life, right, if we just choose to live in that fantasy place, at some point, it can really negatively impact our community because we're all connected, as we know this. We're part of our community, and we have to do the work that's in front of us. And this person is physically healthy and seems mentally fit. They just have this dream that, unfortunately, isn't to be. And I know we started with this lofty thing of your inner life is so powerful. But in some ways, yeah, this is the same story, but just thwarted. We have the ability and the necessity, I think, to have that attitude of what do I need to do that is ultimately good for myself and my family. So the rabbis are realists here as well. And one would hope that there was a compromise, because here's the silver lining to that. When his kids go to school and learn Torah, well, if he hangs out with his children, he can learn Torah through them. If he then becomes an adult, because that's ultimately what makes you adult, is the ability to have a job and to have children, he will also grow, because that's not the end of his Torah journey anyway, because he'll help his kids with their homework. And the hope is that he will actually have a fulfilling life. He just has to do it the hard way. So I hope that we derived some tales, tidbits of wisdom from our Torah scholars there, and that we all understood that difference between empathy and sympathy, because I think that was a really profound shift in my own learning when I saw that. So thank you so much. Go and get some little noshy breaks, and thank you for putting up with me for yet another week of MID. I deserve applause. Thank you, Gary. Please.
Okay. I was thinking, your boy, I remember him, what's his name again?
Eliezer, I think.
Your
Oh,
son?
my boy, Jonah.
Jonah, okay.
My
You know,
silly little
it's been a while since we've been introduced. Jonah.
Yes.
So anyway, is he about 7 now?
He's 6 1/4. He'll be 7, soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
They all grow up, huh?
Yes, you see, you still have your marbles, my dear.
I know, I'm gonna tell you the truth. The marbles are all there. It's the body that slowly deteriorates.
Yeah.
I mean, you understand.
Yeah, no, even I am. My hip hurts every day now.
Oh, right.
Hello, Martin.
Can I ask you a question? Because I have a very good friend that's come upon very tough times. And she's rather negative. She had gluten problems with her stomach. She had a shoulder. She had to be operated on. And now she had a blood clot. Yeah, a stroke kind of like. So a lot of things. And so she
guys are
again, you have
leaving.
to just be that presence and say, wow, that's really hot.
I'll have a good trip.
You know, and let her complain and let her vent and hope that at some point something shifts in her, that she's able to either like get some physical healing, because when you've got so many ailments, it's really impossible when you're in pain and you're exhausted and sleep deprived. You can't be like, I'm grateful for the sunshine. So I love that you care, and I think you get to just, and also you're allowed to protect yourself if she is getting you down, and if you're in too much contact, you're also allowed to, you're allowed to do like, let me do a little,
Every day
yeah.
we left the year, she's suffering. I mean, you know, she got better from, she's managing the gluten-free stuff, and she's recovered from the shoulder. Those are all recovered.
But yeah, like she's very hanging on to that story of look at all this pain I went through.
Yeah, look at
and-
all that she went
Yeah.
through, and now she can't sleep and she's exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you get to still say for you, you know, I'm so sorry that that's happening. It's a lot. You know, I acknowledge it because everyone wants that acknowledgement, you know. And you can kind of model maybe in yourself, I'm grateful for, you know, because you're right, you don't want to do, well, at least your leg works, you know, because if she's not ready to hear that, like that has to come from within. But I love that you clearly care about this person, and I want to give you permission to say you don't have to call this person every day. Yeah, like you're also allowed to say, long term, hopefully something will shift in her, and you can pray for her. You know, you can even say that to you. You can say, I will pray for you, just if there's any kind of spiritual shift that needs to happen. Because yeah, ultimately it's the two-way thing. It's the, and it does sound like she's taking steps, like if she's able to go gluten free, and that won't hurt her as much. And she's showing up to doctor's appointments. You know, she's going to get better, but some people do need to complain a lot and say, like, look at me, I'm really suffering. You're a wonderful human, Martin.
last night was fun. I mean,
I think I'm gonna enjoy this more.
the second book. Oh, this.
This
Yeah.
session.
Yeah. Oh, lower. Okay. Oy vey. Oh. I'm too young to say oy vey. Is that better? All I said into the mic was oy vey. I was crepsing because my knees It is an important. Actually, that's how I ended my. Here, I'm going to put a push for it. We often on Tuesday nights we do a lot of adult ed, and I not every week, but just a few times we're reading 3 books together, and we finished the first book, which was On the Question of Palestine by an anti-Zionist author named Edward Said. And so some of you here, Susie was here, and yeah, a bunch of you were there for the class. But if you're not, so what we're doing is we're reading 2 anti-Zionist works and 1 defensive Zionism. And it's very interesting, I thought it was an interesting, I mean, if you want high blood pressure, you read the first book. If you want to bring down your blood pressure, then you can read the second book. And then you'll spike your blood pressure when you read the third book is the worst. It's by Peter Beinart. What's that? Yeah, but the first book is written in idiot language. Moronic. Yeah, exactly. No, it's actually, he's not a moron. He was incredibly intelligent, but it's very challenging, right? So so I was just so anyway, if going out at night is something that you like to do or able to do, keep your eye out for the next book. The next book is, we put it in the weekly email that we send out. The next book is On Settler Colonialism by Adam Kirsch, and it is, I think, the best defense of Zionism against the challenge that Zionism is an expression of settler colonialism. So, like, if you want to be able to sort of refute or have like an understanding of what is said in refutation to the, Meshuggah college campuses, this is, I think, the best refutation that there is out there, mass market. This is all a way of me selling my, getting you to come to my program. But it's a lot of fun. So we, and then the other thing is the way I ended class yesterday, Ernie, was oy vey. It's like 7:30 to 9-ish. No, it's in Deber. It's in the beginning. Yeah, it's not every Tuesday, so I think the next one is, I'll tell you what, we'll give you, Susie, and we'll give you the flyer, and if you don't mind sending it out to everybody. But it's in the weekly. Everyone here gets the .rel weekly email? You don't get the... Yeah. You're not a member of this temple? No, I'm Rabbi Mordechai. I'm a member of his temple. That's how you got here. Okay, all right, so you're a member of temple. You're always welcome. You're always invited. Sure. Okay, so let's begin. So what we talked about last time, so I ended the class last night with an oy vey, which is mostly because, let me talk about this a little bit. Mostly because the assumptions of Edward Said, who is the leading academic to kind of like begin this idea that Zionism was settler colonialism. He writes this book that we studied last night with this assumption saying, I need to tell the story of the Palestinians because no one else is, and that the Palestinians are, that Israel is favored in the West and favored in the universities and favored with the liberal intelligentsia and favored in the political party system, and that there is this built-in ingrained bias towards Israel, which may have been true when he wrote the book in 1978. But if you look at what's going on now, that's why I ended the discussion with Oy vey, because now that's no longer the case. And in many ways, the ideas of Edward Said have gained prominence. And so it's a big challenge. Okay, so we, as promised last week, for those of you who want to recall, but we are going to study the book of Bereshit together, the book of Genesis. And I don't have a particular agenda, just to engage in study of Torah. So we'll read the text, we'll stop, we'll comment. I gave a background introductory lecture last week, and now we're going to hop right into the text. I just wanted to remind everyone that my working assumption here is that this text is a compilation of multiple authors, and often I will refer to how the styles of various passages are indicative of the different human voices in the text. So if that is not what you were reared on, some people either find that very interesting, enlightening, or a spike in the blood pressure. So if you thought the Torah was all written by God, you're okay. You can have that belief, it's fine, but that's not what I'm going to be working based on. Okay, so page 3. We're going to start in the beginning. What do you think? We're going to pick it up in the... You thought I was going to pick in... Oh, you're... Okay. Well, Ernie, we'll mark you as absent. It's a good thing you'll take the class pass-fail. Maybe you won't get credit. But it's actually interesting. It's the question that Rashi asks. The question that Ernie just asked is the question that Rashi asks, which is, why start in the beginning? In other words, why does the Torah begin with the universal story of the world? Why not begin with the particular story of the Jewish people? It's a question that Rashi asks. Anyone want to offer an answer? Good. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So I'll repeat the points. To show how wonderful God is. You know what I should do? I'm going to take out my phone and open Rashi just so I can have him. It's not that I'm emailing and texting people. Let me open Rashi. But yeah, there is definitely, I think that's a better answer than Rashi's answer, which is there is an element to the story. Particularly, there's two creation stories in the Bible, and you'll see how they kind of rub shoulders with one another. But the first one is about showing how great God is in bringing order to chaos. That's the first story I like to say is like an engineer's writing of the Torah. The second story is a piece of literature. It's a story in a more classical story. So the first one is formulaic and bringing order to chaos. And the second one is a story. And we'll show the difference between those two. But someone else had, Rosie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah,
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Right. So the Jews, right? Most people want to know, like, all right, how did this thing all start? And so the Jews definitely did that. Sorry, I'm trying to I don't know how to do this. Hold on one second. Oh, okay. Okay. Who else wanted to comment? Joette.
So, what Rosie said is true, but what's interesting is that many other cultures' origin stories start with the origin of their deity. And our story just assumes already that God is there and this is what God does to get the rest of the world going.
Good. Great. Okay, I'm sorry. I should have repeated. Okay, we can get the mic here. This will be the comment mic. Here, bring that over there, and then we could go ahead.
I just want to say that it was very prophetic in terms of, in the beginning there was light because the Big Bang, and that came out much later. You know, it's amazing that the Bible would say, and there will be light. Well, there is light, which is the beginning, which is the Big Bang. You know, so you mentioned that it's more of a scientific approach, to be honest, the first version.
Good. Okay, good. So let me share with you what Rashi says. I wasn't planning on studying Rashi, but when we do that. What Rashi does, maybe I'll bring a little Rashi in here too. Rashi often will take classic rabbinic stories that are either found in the Midrash or in the Talmud. And so they're earlier than he is. He's early Middle Ages, and these are classical texts. So they predate him, often by 1,000 years, but sometimes just a few hundred years. And he'll take those stories and he'll bring them into his discussion of the Torah text. So he's creating a bridge between rabbinic stories and the Torah. And often the question is, when you're studying Rashi, is Mahakashya Rashi, which means what's bothering Rashi? And that is that Rashi picks up on seemingly extraneous words or conflicts in the text. When the text doesn't sort of naturally seem to harmonize or flow, Rashi will notice something, and he'll use a rabbinic story or classical midrash to reconcile the difficulty that he highlights in the text. That's Rashi's enterprise. Okay. So Rashi says, he's quoting here a midrash. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, Lo hayat tzrich lahatchil et Torah. We didn't have to begin the Torah, ela mehachodesh hazeh lechem. Except you only had to begin the Torah from the verse hachodesh lechem, which is after the Exodus, when the Jews are given a commandment. In other words, we only had to begin the Torah with the first commandment to the Jewish people. We don't have to talk about the non-Jews, like there's no commandments there. So you only really needed to start with, like, tell us what we have to view. Shehi mitzvah rishona shenitztavu ba Yisrael. Because the counting, the creation of the calendar is the first specifically Jewish mitzvah that is in the Torah. So that's what Rashi says. So then the question is, Uma ta'am petach beBereshit. Why are we beginning the whole Torah with the story of Bereshit? In other words, why are we telling the story? Why don't we just get to the laws that are specific to the Jewish people? That's the question. And Mishum koach ma'asav higid la'amo, because it conveys the strength, like by starting with Bereshit, it shows the strength of God. Mishum koach ma'asav higid la'amo letet lahem nachalat goyim. And to show that it's also like a inheritance from the nations, that God has the authority to say, this is for the Jewish people. God created the whole world, so therefore God can, if God created the whole world, then God can certainly give us the land of Israel. In other words, if I bake the cake, I get to decide who gets a piece of the cake. And so I can say, Ernie gets chocolate cake, but Joette doesn't get chocolate cake because I'm the one who made the cake. And therefore, according to this midrash, the Torah starts to establish that God's the creator beyond it all, so that the rest of the nations can't say, and this is interesting considering our discussion of last night, that the Jewish people have no claim on the land. Anyway, this is all an extraneous point that was brought up by Ernie saying, why are we beginning from the beginning? And so I just thought I'd bring in a Rashi, but I'll keep Rashi open. You don't seem terribly interested in that Rashi, but that's okay. All right, here we go. I'm going to read out loud, and then I'll stop for questions and comments along the way, or when I want to pontificate or something, okay? I'm going to read in English, and then when I want to go into the Hebrew, I'll give you an alert. I'll go, woo, 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 Hebrew alert, Hebrew alert. Okay, so page 3. When God began to create heaven and turn over earth, the earth being unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water, God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness God called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, a first day. Any questions about that or comments? How does that text feel? Right. That's right. So it's actually interesting. There is a primordial matter that exists. Like, it's not creation ex nihilo. There is already something there, but it's like nothing. But nothing is something. Right? So there is like a void. There's the earth being, to the Hebrew alert, look at the top of page 4. V'ha'aretz hayta tohu uvohu, unformed and void. But it's there. So it's interesting, like, it's like creation of something on top of nothing, but the nothing is something. Creation matter. A creation of matter from primordial matter stuff. Do you remember, like, in the 1980s, when I was a little boy, there was this movie, The Never-Ending Story? Do you remember that? And it was like this little boy. Do you remember showing this to your kids? There was a story about a little boy that needed to read to save the world from a powerful evil force that was taking over. And that force was called the nothing. And so it's just interesting. So, like, this is the opposite. This is something taking over the nothing. Yeah. Right. So you probably like some primordial material that's then constructed into something. So let me just follow in the back, because Susie gets to go first because she's our honoree for this weekend. We don't want to upset the honoree. You know that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even like the way of like and the wind from God sweeping. Look at the Hebrew word for sweeping, mirachefet. The word sounds like sweeping. Like it's just a beautiful word to use. Mirachefet. Like a veruach Elohim mirachefet al panei hamayim. A wind from God sweeping over the water. You know, like the ocean at night, when you look out into the ocean, yeah, and it's dark, there's no light, and it feels like, well, this is like, it's kind of that feel. Zissel, you got a haircut. You look very handsome. Oh, yeah, use the microphone. Come on. Or, you know what, I'll do a better job. You want to come on up? You can come on up. He needs the steps. Do you get your 10,000 steps in every day, Zissel?
I'm sorry.
I'm just messing.
Well, right there at the beginning, what do we see? A void, and God says, let there be light. If that doesn't sound like the Big Bang, I don't know what else sounds like a Big Bang.
Right.
There was void, there was nothing, and God says, let there be light. And what was light? The Big Bang.
Yeah.
I read that.
Yeah, okay. Susie and then Melinda, go ahead. Yeah, and Rosalie said the same thing. That's right. Good. Susie first, then, yeah.
I always looked at this particular,
I always looked at this particular portion as a way that I could mix my religious self to my scientific self. Because before there was light, there was heaven and earth, and who knows how long that void was there until there was day and night, and there was order to the day and night. So the time between constructing the heavens and the earth and the water and the breeze and day and night could have been 1 billion years.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Anyone else wanted to say something? All right, use the microphone.
I never knew this till today, that water is very essential for life on any planet. So if there was, these people were scientists, how did they know this? I mean, they're brilliance. Because scientists now in the universe are searching for planets, but they're looking for water on planets because it's a source of life. So how did, in writing the Bible, how did they know this?
Mm-hmm. Good. Great. It is a good question. I want to alert you to the separation between light and darkness. Vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov, vayavdel Elohim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech. That God makes a distinction between the light and the darkness. And this idea of distinguishing things or giving them specificity, which is what the primordial matter didn't have, right? If you look into the darkness, the endless darkness of the water at night, it feels like it's ad infinitum, but giving things boundaries is a lot about creation. Okay, so that's the first day. Turn over. We're on page 6. Yeah, Joette.
God saw that the light was good and separated the light from the darkness, but is there an implication that the darkness is not good?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Joette asked that, look at this, that God saw at the beginning of verse 4, Vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov, and God saw the light, for it was good. So then the question is, does God, and then separated, and Vayavdel Elohim ben ha'or uvein ha'choshech, and then God distinguishes or separates the light from the darkness. So it makes you wonder then, could God see the darkness? If God, it makes you wonder, like, is the darkness good? Because the light is distinguished because it is good. And then it says here that Vayar Elohim et ha'or, that God saw the light, ki tov, because it was good. So could then God not see the darkness? In other words, is there limits on God? So already you see, like, there's things that are existing beforehand, and then is God fill in your omnipresent, omniscient. Okay, some good questions. There's a lot of this is going to be no answers to. There's just questions. Zissel, I'll repeat your question. Go ahead, or your point. Go ahead, Zissel.
Right here, I'm beginning.
Yes.
When it tells you that God separated the light from the darkness,
Yeah.
it implies that he sees the darkness. The darkness is there. He knows the light, and he made it light for everyone. But not the darkness. You understand? He was aware of the darkness. It's not that he didn't see it. He was aware of it, and thought it was no good. So he created the light.
Could be. I don't know if it's necessarily have to be that way. Okay, good. So Zissel says, like, that implicit in this is the statement that God sees the darkness, but recognizes the goodness in the light. You could read that verse that God sees the light because the light is good. In other words, the reason that it is visible is because it is good, which leads the question of, if it's not good, is it visible? I don't know. Okay. Good question. Yelena. To the mic.
So when I've read of this in the past, I always thought in terms of day and night, but there's other elements that I'm thinking about, and one is the light is energy, and he's creating matter and energy. And the
Yeah.
other thought I had was, it's not just the light as we think of as night and day, but it's the vastness of the universe, which is mainly dark. And when we have a earth or people or whatever, those are things, and that differentiates between the differentiation between light and dark is the absence of things to the creation of things.
Yeah, it's nice. And then your first point is sort of aligned with what Zissel and Rosalie were saying about darkness, about light not just being, light waves, but like matter. Right? And that's an interesting point. Like that certainly harmonizes more with the idea of this is like a Big Bang, like a description of the Big Bang. Okay. All right, onward. We're going to try and get through 2 days. Maybe we'll get through 3 days. Okay. We're on page 6. God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, that it may separate water from water." God made the expanse, and it separated the water which was below the expanse from the water which was above the expanse. And it was so. God called the expanse sky. And there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Again, this prominence of the theme of distinction. God separation. And the verb that they're using, like mavdil, so look on the Hebrew, on the second line in the Hebrew, or Vayomer Elohim, Yirakia betoch hamayim, Vahi mavdil, bein mayim lamayim. And God made a separation. God made a havdalah bein mayim l'mayim, between the types of water. So a lot of creation is parsing out. You know, isn't that what like Michelangelo said about the statue of David, about David? Right, exactly. Someone's like, how do you create, this is not a direct quote, but basically the question was like, how do you create such an incredible sculpture? He said, I didn't create it, I just cut away, it's in the rock, I just cut away the extraneous pieces. So a lot of creation is making a distinction between the David and the extraneous rock, or here making distinctions between the upper expanse and the lower expanse. But Mavdil, this idea of Havdalah, is a prominent theme that's in the story of creation. Okay, that's the second day. God said, I'm on the page 6, verse 9. God said, let the water below the sky be gathered into one area, that the dry land may appear. And it was so. So God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that this was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, seed-bearing plants, fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it. And it was so. The earth brought vegetation, seed-bearing plants of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw this was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a third day. Okay, any comments? Yeah, Bridget. Yeah.
This part always confuses me. So there was sky, and above the sky there's water, and below the sky there's water. So then, so then there's the sky and water, and then he makes land come out of the water, or he moves the water so that it shows the. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the water above the sky? Is that like rain?
Well, so it depends on how you want, right? So you can, if you want to look, this is a good thing that I'm not a biblical literalist. So I don't think this is how the world was created. I think this could be, I don't think that this is important. Like the way that we study history is not that history as a discipline is not what the Bible is. Like it's not trying to record exactly what happened. That's not the goal of the Bible. The goal of the Bible is to make theological statements. And so like I don't think that the point of this text, I think it's kind of fun for us to like, oh, well, what's the water above? Or like if you pull across that sky, if you go high enough in your plane, you'll puncture the top layer and go up into the water. So I don't look at it like that. I look at it as here is God bringing order to primordial chaos. That's how I look at it. Go ahead. It doesn't even have to be quick. It could be a long question. God invented gravity, right? So then the water would come flooding on down, right? Unless you had the sky above it, which kept it all in. Okay, so this text is also not, it could be an ode to like a Big Bang type of thing, but no one is accusing this text of being scientific. Okay, go ahead.
But you can think of it scientifically.
Sure, yeah.
Because you can think of the
together.
The water was all in one place, and the reason for the movement and the land being in different places and the water like that is tectonic movement of
Yeah.
the plates.
Yeah, good. Okay, very good.
Well, I think it's an expression of how the people of the time of the Talmud understood what was going on scientifically. I mean,
Yeah, I think so. Not the people of the Talmud, the people of the time of the Torah. Right. Yeah. Right. Like I imagine that this is, and we'll look at this in contrast to the second story, and you'll feel the difference just from the texture of the text. You'll feel the difference, and then we could even do a compare and contrast of the two stories. And by the way, there are differences in terms of like what's created on certain days. There's contradictions, but that's okay because it's. And I would imagine that's different people writing the first story from the people who are writing the second story. A lot of the theory behind this is like where you grew up in the land of Israel, and like what you are, what you're experiencing, and what is like being told around your campfire, essentially. Okay, good. Anyone else? Someone else want to make a comment? Zissel, go ahead. I'll repeat it for you. You don't have to walk up here unless you want to. All right, here he comes. Zissel Sansenowitz, you're the next contestant on The Torah is Right. That's right.
I will never deny the Torah. The Torah is right, but the Torah needs to be explained. It's not necessarily self-understandable.
Okay.
Talking about what we're talking about now, that the water was gathered in one place and all of that, it's really not different at all from what the scientists think. When the earth was formed, it was very, very hot, and it rained for centuries. This is what physicists tell us. And those, the centuries of rain filled the low spaces, and there were the seas. And the higher places was the dry land. And that's what the science is saying. And it is not necessarily different from what we just read.
Okay, good. All right, we are going, so I see I have some people who want to have a more literal reading, which is fine. Okay. It's good. We'll butt heads later. Okay. So we finished the third day. I'm on verse 14 on page 7. God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate day from night." Another use of the word separation. "They shall serve as signs for the set timers, the days and the years, and they shall serve as lights in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two greater lights, the greater light to dominate the day and the lesser light to dominate the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth, to dominate the sky, the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that this was good, and there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. So I just want to point out one interesting thing about this is the perception of the biblical authors, and how could they have anything other than this perception that the moon was bigger than the stars, right? But of course, that's just their proximity. They're closer, so they had like 3 levels. They're like, oh, there's the stars that are up there, and they're providing light. But they conceived of the moon as something bigger, and they thought the sun was the biggest. They didn't realize, of course, nor how could they, that the sun was a star. I mean, okay. So, all right, Melinda, and then this is great that you all have so many comments. So I am sort of teetering on like how many comments to take. Otherwise, we're going to be in the first chapter of Genesis by Shavuot. But okay, go ahead. I never say no to Melinda because her and Warren made over 100 kippot for the kids in the religious school. Did you guys all know that? Yeah, it's incredible. Go ahead.
It said he made two great lights, and then it said he made stars. So did he make two lights and then one broken part into stars?
No, it was the stars first.
But it says two lights.
God made, no, look at verse 14. There will be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate day from night. Those are the stars. Yeah. And they'll serve as lights in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth. Those are stars. And it was so. And then God made two great lights. The greater light, the sun, to dominate the day, and the lesser light, the moon, to dominate the night. So you sort of have a hierarchy here of the stars, and then there's the two greater lights. The greatest was the sun, and the greater, but not greater than the sun, was the moon. But the biblical authors couldn't have known that a moon paled in size compared to a star, but it's just a question of proximity. Okay, Warren, and then we're gonna move on. Go ahead, Warren. Yeah. Exactly. So that Warren is saying that there are 3 days that exist before we could take time. Right? Yes. Right. Right. God days, exactly. So when you say God, you had a long day at work. I mean, this is like a really long day. It defies time. Right. It could be 1 billion years. Exactly. And that's what some of the biblical fundamentalists do with this. They say the earth is, how do you explain that the earth is millions of years old? Well, it's thousands of years old plus 6 elastic days. And those 6 elastic days are worth, lots of years an hour. So anyway, okay. Page 8, verse 20. I think that we're going to stop here at the end of the 5th day. Maybe we'll get to the 6th day. Okay. God said, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures and birds that fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky. God created the sea monsters and all the living creatures of every kind that creep, which the waters brought forth in swarms, and all the winged birds of every kind. And God saw that this was good. God blessed them, saying, be fertile and increase. Fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, a 5th day. I want to move on. God said, let the earth bring forth every kind of creature, cattle, creeping things, and wild beasts of every kind. And it was so. And God made wild beasts of every... Well, by the way, it's interesting, by the way, that the birds, you could do this, like God created the sea monsters and the fish and all that stuff, and then the birds. And what are birds? They're dinosaurs. So you could say that the dinosaurs are on these big elastic days that are worth millions of years because time, space is continuing, that the dinosaurs are accounted for in this. by the mention of birds. I don't believe that, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like you look at birds. Birds are the surviving dinosaurs. Oh, reptile. I think they say no. I don't know from lizards and stuff. I know that we had a pet lizard. It didn't last very long. It had an unceremonious ending, like the dinosaurs. But I don't know. I don't know so much about lizards, and I don't know so much about birds. I just know that birds are survivor dinosaurs, or that's what they said. So anyway, so the birds are here before us as the dinosaurs were. So anyway, God, we're on the 5th day. God said, let the earth bring forth every kind of living creature, cattle, creeping things, and wild beasts of every kind. And it was so. God made wild beasts of every kind, and cattle of every kind, and all kinds of creeping things of the earth. And God saw that this was good. And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. There you go. They shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, and all the creeping things that are on the earth. Page 10. And God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fertile and increase. Pru orvu, be fertile and increase. Fill the earth and master it, and rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and all the living things that creep on the earth. God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant that is upon the earth, and every tree that is seed-bearing fruit. They shall be yours for food. And to all the animals on the land, to all the birds of the sky, and to everything that creeps on the earth in which there is breath of life, I give all the green plants for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he had made and found it very good. And there was evening and there was morning, this 6th day. I want to point out just a few things as we just conclude here, that God said, let us make man in our image. Who's God talking to? That obviously bothers Rashi, and Rashi says it's the angelic court. Exactly. They shall rule and then something else that it mentioned, and Rabbi Bernhard would be happy to hear this, that it seems that everyone's on a vegan diet to begin. So before you have your shawarma tonight, know that started as vegetarians. Don't worry, if you have shawarma, I won't tell Rabbi Bernhard. So you can eat it, and I'm not going to care. Okay, so we're going to conclude there. We finished the 6th day, and we are going to enter chapter 2 next week. What I want you to remember about chapter 1 is almost like the formulaic way that it is written. And that a lot of your points, I imagine there were 2 groups of people here. The kind of you who spoke a lot and picked up like little places of the text that seemed to like either harmonize with something scientific, or that made you think of, the guy said, oh, birds are dinosaurs and blah 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 and blah, 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 and or like the elastic nature of time. It was all like very scientific, and it wasn't a story here. There was, if you look at the motif is that God makes distinctions and separations and creations and brings order to what Ernie started with, to the primordial chaos that was there earlier. That within 6 days, God takes something that was chaotic, null and void, tohu vavohu, as it says in the Hebrew, and forms order. And this feels like an organization project. God does this, and then God does this, and then God does this. There are no adjectives, except for God calling it good. There are no adjectives. There's no emotion. There's no story, there's no tension. So this is a very, the text reads as I think the intent, which is we're creating order, like very well organized, very kind of neat and boxed, and systematic, like Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Voker, Yom, whatever, Yom Sheni, Yom Echad, Yom Shlishi. Is there evening and there was evening and there was morning X day, and that caps off the day, and then you go on to the next day, and then Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Voker, and then on and on and on for these 6 days, and and that is the tenor of the first creation story. We'll finish the first creation story with the beginning of chapter 2 next time, and then we'll see how the second creation story couldn't be more different, and then maybe by 2 weeks' time, or sometime, maybe by Pesach, hopefully, no, I'm kidding, we'll do a comparison of the two, okay? All right, if you have questions, I ask you to hold them or comment, because I got to run, and I wanted to get through this, but I'd be happy to talk to you about it next time, okay? Or you could email me, whatever you prefer. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Just like the North and South Pole are actually named bears and no bears.
That's exactly right.